creator of the Protective Diet, and I'm excited to show you my latest recipe. It was a request from one of my Protective Diet Ed students for unfried rice. Silvana, thank you so much for requesting this recipe because it's going to be a great addition to the recipe collection on protectivediet.com. So what we're going to start off with is a dry stainless steel pan, and we're going to heat it up to medium high heat. It doesn't have to be preheated before you put in the mushrooms. We have sliced mushrooms. You can dice them up fine if you want to hide them in the rice, if you have some non-mushroom eaters in your house. You just want to spread those out in the pan. We also have some diced onions. Spread those out in the pan. We want them to touch the surface of the pan so that they brown nicely. Now, before they start browning, the mushrooms are going to release a lot of moisture. So we're going to allow that to happen. And once that moisture releases, then the browning's going to occur. If you skip the mushrooms, you're going to lose some flavor in this recipe, but you can. And it's going to go a lot faster because the onions don't have as much moisture to release. So we're just going to be patient with this stuff and let it be. You don't have to stir it around, you don't have to mix it, just let it brown nicely. Now keep an eye on it, especially if this is your first time browning mushrooms and onions without any oil or liquid, because you don't want the pan to get too hot. You want it hot enough to brown, but not so hot that it burns. If it starts to burn, or what I call get away from you, just remove the pan from the heat, turn the heat down, get it off the burner. It's that simple. Or you could add a little bit of liquid. Now I want you to avoid adding liquid to the pan because that's going to keep the browning action from happening. And we want to get that browning. That browning is what gives the dish all the flavor. It's not the oil, it's not adding water or vegetable broth and boiling your mushrooms and onions. It's allowing it to brown that gives your dish the flavor. This is what's going to produce that awesome Protective Diet recipe. So that's why I'm going over this. I've gone over it a few times. I'm just moving these around to see if they're browning yet. They're not, but I'm not stirring. This technique, I go over it a lot in a lot of my videos because this is key in developing the flavors, the browning flavors in soups, in stir fries, in the gravy recipe, the mushroom gravy recipe, anything you're making, start off with that browning. That's what gives you flavor. Okay, this is starting to brown really nicely. You can see in the pan. Don't be afraid of it. Let it go. Let it keep browning. It's at a medium heat, so it's not going to turn it down if it scares you a little bit. It's not a big deal. It's not going to burn at this heat. The next thing I want to add is the garlic. I don't like to add the garlic in the beginning of any of my recipes that I'm browning because the garlic tends to burn, unlike the onions and the mushrooms. So when I put it in, I put them in on top. If I start a recipe and I'm browning onions, I'll put them on the top of the onions and leave them there and not mix them into the bottom until it's almost done browning. And then I'm going to add the rest of the garlic. I had 1 clove of garlic that I pressed in my favorite kitchen tool, the garlic press, the Xylus Susie garlic press. It's my favorite. If you don't have one of those, you see how quick that was for me. I didn't have to dice anything. Just press it through. And then we're going to add some ginger. Get yourself a microplane or one of these fine graters. It'll help you out a lot with ginger. Any leftover ginger that I don't use when I buy it fresh from the store, I peel it and I put it in a freezer bag into my freezer, and you can just grate it into your dishes frozen. Otherwise, if you leave this out on the counter, it's just going to shrivel up and you won't be able to use it after a week or so. So get it in the freezer. You can see this is still browning nicely, but it's not getting away from me. It's not getting too brown. It's a nice golden color on the bottom of the pan. You can see moisture coming out of these mushrooms here. Just let it keep going. If it's getting too brown, if one side of your burner is a little hotter, as mine is, move them to the other side if you're afraid it's going to get too dark. I actually want them to brown, so I'm going to move them over to this hotter side of my pan. And I'm going to give those a few minutes to do their thing and get nice and golden brown. That's my flavor in my fried rice. Now hopefully you can see the browning in the bottom of the pan. This is all going to get incorporated into my dish. This is what's going to add so much flavor. And to get that browning off the bottom of the pan, we're going to add our liquid. The ingredients in here are all in the recipe. And we're going to turn up the heat, and that's going to release all those brown bits from the bottom of the pan. And there's going to be no cleanup on this pan when we're done, because it's happening right now. Now, a lot of times people are very intimidated by cooking without oil. They're like, oh, I'm going to burn my pan, ruin my pan. Hopefully you can see in the camera, all those bits came off the bottom of the pan just by adding that cool liquid, and it released all those bits into our gravy, into our sauce. Just by stirring, you're releasing those bits from the bottom of the pan. And all your flavor is now in your dish. And what we're going to add is our veggies so that they get tender. We have some sliced pea pods. I chopped them because this is rice, so we don't want big chunks of vegetables. Some red bell peppers, you could use any color, and some frozen peas. If you don't have one of these vegetables, or you have extra and you want to add carrots, go for it. And we're just going to put those in there. And then I have some green onions. And we have some bean sprouts. I usually give these a few minutes to get tender, put a lid on it, and then we're going to add the bean sprouts. Oh, before I put the lid on it, I should probably add the rice. This is fried rice, or unfried rice. So I have my rice that was cooked in the broth. And I cooked my rice in my Secura pressure cooker. I call it the life changer. I love this thing. It's got a rice cooker setting. It's a wonderful kitchen tool. You could use a rice cooker, or you could cook your brown rice on the stovetop as well. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit, just so I don't lose all that broth. I want it to mix in with my rice instead of boil out. My grocery store is so great. They sell bean sprouts in a little container like this. They're put out fresh every day. 75 cents for this whole container of fresh bean sprouts. And I'm just gonna lay those on top. I'm gonna cover this dish and let that steam. You can see the steam starting to form on the top of the pan. That's gonna make the veggies all nice and tender. We'll give that a few minutes, and then it's gonna be ready to go. Okay, our veggies have been cooking for a few minutes now, about 10 minutes, and they're nice and tender. Just test them and see. Take your crispest vegetable and see if it's nice and tender for you. I like mine to be a little bit crispy. That's why I add the bean sprouts in the end, because I like them to show up. Otherwise, they just kind of blend into everything. This unfried rice is unlike any fried rice you're going to find at your local Chinese place. It's just so fresh and loaded with all these wonderful veggies. And be sure to serve it up with some chopsticks. It'll pace you a little, slow you down, get you to enjoy every morsel of this dish. Jerry's been waiting. I have to pass this on to him. Thanks for watching, and enroll in PD Ed and start eating your way to a slimmer, healthier you. Take care and best of health.